Okay, let it upload right quick. All right, so this is on Trump and the GE. Of course, this is on the Shock Exchange. I'm here with Mr. Mitchell, and it's Trump and the GE Parses Harris versus Trump debate. So the debate's finally here. It finally happened, and the first thing I know, I figured Trump would come out on point. The first thing I noticed was that Kamala Harris was in fighting spirit. That I think once the heat got turned up, I think she was very serious, and it's almost like a football player when they first get hit. You know, when they get hit, they get into the game.
Yeah.
So I think she was dead serious and wasn't as, didn't come off as like, as unserious or whatever. And I think she was answering questions as best she could. So we're just going to cover some broad items on the different issues they covered and who we thought won and why. I'll do the first one, the economy. Okay, I thought Trump killed this. I thought because he already has a track record of what he did when he was in office the first time. And a lot of reason they got him out of office was because of we need to resist Trump. The corporate media, who he bloodied the corporate media, he bludgeoned them by tweeting and avoiding the corporate media. They lost a lot of money, so they were against him, the fifth estate. And then the Democrats constantly, Russia, we need to resist Trump, so on and so forth. So I think his track record on the economy is what it is. I think he can run on that. So when you get to Kamala, she basically talked about her plan. Talked about her plan on tax deductions, child tax credit, and I'm thinking like, if you were going to do that, you would have run on that when you first ran for president 3.5 years ago, and you'd be implementing it now. So she's talking about as if she's like maybe the governor of California who's running. She's pretty much the incumbent. She's talking about a lot of imagery would work for Obama, but I don't think it's going to work for her. And Trump just basically talked about when he was in office how he was show strength against China on the tariffs. I think that resonates with the American people, especially in Middle America, like we're fighting back against China. Also with the tech companies who he fought back on China against them stealing our intellectual property. So who would have thought that he could increase tariffs on China and we still have a stable economy? Even though albeit it was benefited by, really low tax rates. And interest rates. He also talked about how you have a lot of undocumented migrants coming to this country, taking jobs from blacks, Hispanics, and unions. So he hit all those pressure points. So I thought he won that with flying colors because Kamala's talking about imagery, things that could happen or she may do, which I don't really believe. But anyway.
Yeah, I think I think even before, the thing that I was thinking about was ABC before, kind of leading up to the coverage leading up to the debate. They broke down some of the brass tacks of the economy, the impact of inflation in real numbers, like month over month spending, what Americans are spending, and the top line number is that Americans are spending close to $1,200 a month more versus when Trump was in office. They also acknowledged that there's about a $900 to $1,000 increase in monthly pay. I feel like I want to fact check that a bit. We have seen some wage creep up, but due to real inflation, not just the top line number that the Fed gives, especially when we look at PCE data, etc., tells a slightly different story. But even if that's true, on the face of it, the bottom line is pretty straightforward, right? Americans were doing better under Trump. Like that's the biggest headline. Agree, Trump did better on the economy, answering the question of the economy, and frankly, her policies are, on the surface, they sound good. They sound good. Expanding the EIC credit, um, other credits, home ownership, etc., that she's just laid out in the last 48 hours of her website. That's been missing for the last 50 plus days that she's been running. Um, but kind of digging deeper into these tax credits. Tax credits don't put money in the American people's hands at the time that the money is being spent. So that's my biggest critique about her leaning into that policy. Um, is that sure you can give a tax credit, but I still have to spend the money in order to get the money, and I still have to have the money in order to be able to spend the money. So what does the tax credit do for me in the month that my child care bill is due, that my
Okay.
tuition is due? So for that reason, I think I gave it to Trump hands down. Just even kind of going into it, I really wasn't sure how Kamala was going to handle that question. And I
Okay.
think
She
she
didn't.
did, I guess, as best as she could with the
Right.
3 years of history that the Biden administration has had.
Right. So she didn't. She didn't hurt herself. And people who want to vote for her and want to um, believe in a dream, she did. She did her job.
Yeah.
She also brought up COVID, which I thought fell flat. That under Trump, when Trump was in office, she brought up COVID, which I thought fell flat because she said he handled an economy that was record unemployment, but it was caused because the economy was shut down. But I thought he came back and talked about what a great job he did with just operation I forgot what he called it, operation whatever,
Yeah. For COVID.
warp speed, yeah, that.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Yep.
and he also talked about her policies. She downloaded it from a Biden website or something. She copied and pasted it from Biden, so that didn't go too well. They talked about abortion, which I don't think. I think Kamala is getting her policies from the Negro Whisperers, or not policies, but her what she thinks is going to land from the Negro Whisperers who'll say anything. They talked about abortion. They talked about Trump's racist and Trump, that type of stuff. I think she's trying to play up things that I don't think it's going to hit that hard because at the end of the day, the Supreme Court has spoken, and Trump, while Kamala has been going around doing on her press tour with rappers and celebrities, Trump has been actually getting battle tested in raising these issues on abortion and the economy with doing interviews. So he's been practicing his debate skills and testing like a comedian would test out his material on the road. He's been testing out his answers, his feedback, getting feedback from his answers. He's been talking about abortion and addressing the same question, doing interviews, several series of interviews. So he said that at the end of the day, the Supreme Court has spoken. So I'm not sure how you can overcome that. Secondly, he said that that he doesn't believe in late-term abortion, which I think most of us, I think the majority of people agree with, and that which is not going to scare a lot of women, that he thinks that, in case of rape, incest, so on and so forth, he believes that it should be allowed, and it's going back to the states. He's also ready to canvass a select group of politicians. He also brought up Reagan, which I think resonates with a lot of Republicans. Anytime you can bring up Reagan, and so he's been testing out this material. And he's been this response has been battle tested and has been tested and tried and true doing interviews. And the other thing, as far as Kamala is concerned, again, the Supreme Court has spoken. She says she's going to, if a bill comes before Congress, she's going to try to undo the Supreme Court decision. It's preposterous. They're trying to say if a bill comes, if the Congress raises a bill, she's going to make the sun rise in the west. So.
Yeah, so I'll say I was surprised by how well Trump did with the question of abortion. I think it was really strong. So I guess, I'll say very quickly, I think my bias going into it was I knew that when the question of abortion would come up, Kamala is definitely going to lean into the Trump administration packing the Supreme Court, and ultimately resulting in Roe v. Wade being overturned during their administration. Fair point. but Trump kicking back, and specifically with states' rights. I don't know if it. Like, I think it was a phenomenal point. So let me be clear on that. I loved that point. I don't know if the efficacy of the point is strong enough to resonate with the voters to truly understand that what he was saying is that I put the vote in the hands of the people, like of the actual voters. I think if he would have, I think to some degree he said that by saying, I put it into the hands of the states. Every state, you know, votes slightly differently, but states represent the people, da da da. But I think I would have liked to hear something a little bit more almost in your face and simple, such as that the people, like the people's votes go a longer way. They are more effective locally in their states, in their municipalities, than on a federal level, in other words. And I don't know if, and that's a very powerful, to me, it's a very powerful thing to do. I don't know if that, how well that lands, right? If you don't make that direct point for people to like really get. But I think it was a strong point, and I think he did extremely well. Where I think he blundered, uh, it was almost kind of painful to hear him continue this talking point about the late term abortion, like after 9 months. It's like, you know, I just thought it was a huge misstep, um, and I feel like it may have undone some of the strength of the previous points that he made regarding states' rights and his stance on abortion. I think thankfully the question that allowed him to hone in came in later, specifically about the three exceptions. So I think that like maybe that was a saving grace. I would have liked to pay attention to the live polls that often happen during the debates to see kind of how well that landed, because I feel like that made up for some of that late term uh, just rhetoric. I mean, it's just conjecture at this point. I truly think that piece was just unnecessary.
Oh, okay. So who do you think won that area?
Um, I think Kamala probably won the popular
Okay.
vote, but I
Okay.
think that Trump probably was not that far behind.
Okay.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
think, yeah,
In my opinion, it's like the Supreme Court has spoken. You're gonna like vote. You're not gonna vote for Trump because the Supreme Court has
right.
overturned Roe versus Wade.
But
And
I
if you
think
vote
that's
for
such a
Kamala,
nuanced point.
if you vote for Kamala, Roe versus
Right,
Wade
right.
still gonna be overturned. So it's like,
But I think that that's the thinking for a lot of voters.
okay,
Like that's the impression that she's giving, right? And I
okay,
think that like I'm just even tonight on Twitter have been responding to people that are talking about COVID, for example, and not even realizing that Dr. Fauci debunked him on his own self in congressional testimony, but yet talking about how the Biden administration did better with COVID. So, in other words, just giving the example that, even in real time, a lot of voters just aren't critically thinking about these things. They're largely
okay,
misinformed.
all right, okay,
And I think that the thought that, oh, because she's president, she can somehow overturn, like reverse Roe v. Wade.
right, all
You
right,
know what I mean? Like I think
I
that
got you.
that may land with a lot of voters.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
it's like a lot of imagery. Like, you know, I'm gonna do. You're not gonna do anything. Cut it out.
right, right,
Drugs. I think a little more imagery from Kamala. You've been president. You were president for 3.5 years. Trump actually started trying to address the drug overdose crisis
yeah,
with policy. I mean, I think it was trial and error. I think he was about to get there, after saying, "Hey, we need to settlement." Under Biden, these state AGs dragged their feet, which is the worst thing that could have happened.
Yeah.
Trump was trying to get a settlement and trying to see how can we be effective and get this money to the states. The Biden administration, under the Biden administration, these state AGs dragged their feet, and there's more imagery from Kamala what she's going to do. So, I thought that was kind of like, I don't think people, it kind of was like almost like a push. I don't think it was an issue that people were really that concerned about. It was just more like a talking point raised by the moderators.
Yeah, I think quite a few points get into like just requires a level of like base knowledge and nuance, um, and a lot of her cover for things was just throwing out this cliche. Um, you know, we're we're how's it worded? Like more brings us together than divides us. Same tired old playbook. It's like those two cliches just kept getting
You mean
old.
hope and change was taken?
Right, right. It's like, and I feel like she used that to fill in the actual gaps.
Got right.
Her response is just gotta paint this broad brush. Um, Whereas, there were some points that Trump just had her dead to rights. You are
Mm-hmm.
currently in office.
Right. Okay. So
Like, stop talking to us about what you're gonna do.
right,
What
right,
have you done?
right. He also made a point at some point that you can actually go back to your office tonight and implement
Oh, I thought that was like when
it. He
he
said
brought up the
Biden.
point
He
about
said
Biden.
Biden can close the borders right now if he wants. What are you waiting for? All you gotta do is call the border patrol. Anyway, so on immigration, I thought that I don't know what these moderators thought they were doing was trying to ask Trump a hard question. Said, well, you said that once elected, you would hire the National Guard to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants. How would you do that? Would you go door to door? By asking him the question,
Never answered.
you're basically acknowledging that there are 11 million undocumented immigrants that came here under the Biden administration. Trump pointed out that you want them as voters. He's basically
Yeah.
preying on the fears of most Americans that you're bringing other countries. I know Statue of Liberty says you want your huddled masses. They're bringing the Biden administration is bringing terrorists, criminals, drug dealers, who other countries like Venezuela said you bring them. We don't want them back. You come back here, we'll kill you. He says crime is down in those countries and crime is up in our country, and you're not bringing PhDs over here. You're bringing criminals, undocumented immigrants, and you bring them here to get voters.
So
And you're dragging our country down. And whether you say crime is up or whatever, but you're skirting the immigration process. We have an immigration process in place for a reason. So I think he killed that. And Kamala never answered the question on immigration. When he first asked it, she never answered the question on immigration. She changed it. She pivoted to Trump has been accused of Trump is a criminal. And Trump has been indicted, and
the irony.
he's
The
a criminal,
irony
and he's gonna have a trial
Yeah.
if he gets elected. Right after he gets elected, Trump said
Right.
you weaponized the DOJ against me all around the country. Fonnie Willis, he mentioned Fonnie Willis. Make sure he got her name in there. So I think he won on immigration hands down. In my opinion, she never answered the question.
She didn't answer the question, but I'm honestly I'm honestly disappointed in Trump. Whoever was preparing him, there's clearly, I think both candidates are leaning into the polls, right? Like whatever, like whoever is feeding them information about the voter bases and the 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 issues that are important to their voter base, but not just the issues, but also the perception of those issues, the perception of the information that is currently being put out to that voter base. I believe that they're leaning into that, like if they, because obviously they have entire teams of people that are prepping them and providing them data points, da da da. And and I think, although it was funny, um, but I think the way he answered it is a misstep. I think again he started off very strong, but soon as which did show up later in the debate, he continued to spout the now completely debunked reports about people eating pets and cats, and he continued to like triple down on it. That's one of the things that, frankly, was just annoying to hear him continue to spout this mistruth. Um, and because to me, it didn't add anything to his actual point, but making inflammatory statements. So, because if you subtract that point, like if you subtract the statements about people eating pets in Springfield and even some of the mistruths regarding Aurora, if you take those out of the points that he was making about borders and immigration, the point still stands. In other words, so to me, it it maybe for tonight it galvanized his base because again, I think both candidates are speaking to the perceptions of the information that their voter base believes. And he continued to parrot that particular point. So to me, it tells me that I think in the short term, his voter base echoed the sentiment, but I think it's going to bite him later on
Okay.
because
Okay.
as that point continues to get debunked with more efficacy than it has been, because I think it's
Okay.
been debunked very quietly
Well,
as of now. But I
I'll say
think
this.
later on, yeah,
I'll say this. I mean, debunked is an eye of the beholder. If the city manager says something, that does that mean it was debunked, or who's there to debunk it? Because some people may say Dave Portnoy is a trusted resource in terms of information, and I would trust Dave Portnoy before I would trust people on MSNBC. I can tell you that. A couple things.
mm,
What's lost in all this is that Trump was the one who raised the border issue when he first ran for president, 2016. People were laughing at him. Trump raised this issue.
right, right,
He warned us about it. We need a border wall. He warned us about it, and people were laughing. And now you see why we need a border wall. I think he was not speaking as a politician. I think he was speaking more when he's talking about China and the border when he was running for president in 2016. I think he was speaking as a businessman who's been out in the world, and I think those were a couple of his pet peeves. Because I think he was talking about China back in the '90s
mm,
when he was on Oprah Winfrey show. So those are things that his own pet peeves. But people he was talking about the border. He raised the issue. People were
right,
laughing. Didn't know why is he talking about this. He started deporting people, and now he has to do it again. I think he purposely. I think Trump is a lot savvier than people give him credit for. I think he purposely raised issues of immigrants eating pets. I think he did it on purpose. I think he baited that moderator. I think he baited the moderator into trying to correct him and say, "Oh no, that's been debunked by the city manager." And Trump specifically said the neighbors were the ones who went on TV and said it. People went
right.
on TV. People went on TV and said they ate my pet. Who are you going to believe? The neighbor who was there or the city manager who may politically or optically have a reason to say that it's not true because he's embarrassed. So he did that on purpose to bait that moderator. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Debate Kamala Harris say you're crazy. And he said, who would you believe? A U.S. citizen? And somehow people maybe seem like they're biased against a U.S. citizen who's dressed as a regular, maybe blue jeans and a hoodie or whatever, who was actually there. So none of us knew. None of us were there. Who would you believe? A U.S. citizen, several U.S. citizens in the city of in Springfield, Ohio, who said they ate my pet, or the city manager who wasn't there. Who would you believe? He also said there's also other stories out there as well of other cities who are embarrassed to come forward. So he did that on purpose. He
Okay.
said, who would you believe, the city manager who wasn't there, or the neighbor?
Yeah.
Now, why would you believe the city manager over the neighbor who was actually there? Maybe both of them lied. Who knows? But who
Right.
would be
Right.
who's most credible?
No, I understand, and I think, and one, at least for me to be clear, um, the reports that essentially the police have made, the two arrests that have been made, specifically about the woman that is eating a cat, who was black, but she was actually Black American, and then the gentleman that apparently beheaded decapitated a duck and was walking around with the duck, I guess eating the duck. Was also he was black but not Haitian. He was actually South African. So these are the only two reports that the police have of any pets being eaten or otherwise. Like they don't even have dispatch reports of people calling in saying, "Hey, my pets have been eaten." Um, just witnessed, someone's pet be eaten, da da da. So, and I think that's where the city manager is getting, his information from as well. But to your point, there has been at least three or four people that have given, again, I don't know if we can call it testimony, but speech at their town hall. Uh, Saying these same things, right? That they witnessed personally,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, two of the women who spoke at the town hall were talking about their own personal experiences. So how, like in other words, is definitely a lot of room for misinformation, disinformation to be spread, and certainly, um, you know, can be easily distorted.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
what's what's le- and just on that point, because to me, what's less distorted, where I can certainly see how Trump or anyone else can listen to these compelling stories of neighbors and individuals saying, "This is my personal experience of these immigrants being in my front yard." And that's what some of these people were testifying to, or speeching again, giving in the town hall, uh, but saying these people are in my front yard. They're committing crimes. They're blockading me and da da da. So it's certainly easier than the access that Kamala has to national intelligence briefings, and to still spout, even after video has been leaked, that it was in fact the IDF that bombed their own citizens at the Naka or Nava Music Festival. And for her to continue spouting that point that it was Hamas versus the IDF, to me, is actually more egregious,
Okay.
because she has a different level of access than the rest of us do,
Okay.
and probably even Trump, being that he's a former president versus a sitting vice president.
Okay. But on the point about I guess how to weaponize disinformation, you're making a point that Kamala or neither Kamala or the moderator made about citizens, immigrants eating somebody's pets. And the bigger point is that there are over 10 million undocumented immigrants. That's a bigger
Right,
point. They're
right,
allowed in by the Biden administration. And
yep,
Trump weaponized disinformation in a way that, he clearly backed up Kamala and the moderator. He's
yeah,
basically saying, who are you going to listen to? The city manager who has an incentive to say that, or the people who are actually there? And
yeah,
Kamala also used this information as far as about hate. He decided, January 6th in Charlottesville. Well, anyway, make a lot of, so let's move on. But
yeah,
uh, let's see what else. Okay, so she talked about his crimes a little bit. I thought he won that, but and then the moderator asked her about her flip flopping on fracking, assault weapons,
mm,
border crossing. She struggled. She struggled. She didn't. She only question she tried to address was fracking. She said, "I won't ban fracking," but she already said she would ban it. So I don't believe anything she said. And Trump basically said she's going to ban fracking if she gets elected. And he talked about how oil was flowing when he was president, gas prices were lower, which resonates with the public. So she didn't really answer the question on assault weapons or the border crossing. She did give a half-hearted answer on fracking, but I think she whiffed basically. She whiffed on those points.
Yeah, I think the fracking is probably the only point that she was clearest on, simply because she answered that question before. She made the distinction in the CNN interview with Dana Bash, who did push her on, uh, on the points of her flip flopping, and she made clear that I guess in the last 5 years she changed position. And while they didn't bring it up tonight, Dana Bash, going back to CNN interview, specifically asked her, was there some piece of evidence, whether scientific or otherwise, that you read or some piece of information? Like to me, she was literally giving her an alley oop um, to be able to justify the pivot to say, well, did you, come across some new information that informed your thinking around it, and then you later, change position based on that new information.
Like
And she
something an
whiffed
adult,
it,
like
and she
something
whiffed
an adult, something an adult would do.
it, right, and she completely whiffed it during the
Right,
CNN interview.
right,
She just
right, right,
doubled down on her saying, well, I see that there is a way for us to effectively tackle climate change without banning fracking. But there was no new, like,
no,
she didn't admit that, well, I
yeah,
got, a new piece of information. So to me, so she had to practice, like, being under that pressure from the CNN interview with Dana Bash, which to me translated to tonight's debate, which is why she was clearest on the fracking. That I'm clear about fracking, but to me, the fracking issue collectively is still a whiff, though, because
right.
you can't substantiate the reason for your change after, you know, I guess 10 years of not supporting fracking. Like that's a wild, like that's a wild change. But yeah,
Okay, okay. So on January 6th, I thought, I don't know if I think the moderator brought this up. I think Trump killed this. I think he basically said, this just because you said I incited a riot doesn't mean I incited a riot. He said that I used the words peacefully and patriotically. And there are people who were there. I think they had a town hall with Zero Hedge, Alex Jones, other people who said the exact same thing. Trump didn't incite anything. He didn't incite a riot. And that was one of several speeches he made. There was like tens of thousands of people out there, not just D.C. but around the country. And he said I used the words peacefully and patriotically. He also said I offered Nancy Pelosi and the D.C. mayor 10,000 National Guard troops. I offered it to him. So this is going to be a big rally. I offered them 10,000 National Guard troops. They turned it down. He said Nancy Pelosi didn't do her job. So
right.
keep going on about this, bringing this stuff up. I think the moderator brought it up, but for Kamala Harris to keep trying to bring up issues about racism, January 6th, indictments, or Charlottesville, I think it's not helping her. But I think he killed that.
I'll disagree. I'll just I think the pivot was a smooth pivot. Um, However, going back to the handling of January 6th, I think the thing that people wanted to hear was an outright condemnation. And with the same fervor that he goes after immigration, right? Like, even so, while he did, I think he answered the question well in the sense where he's like, well, here's the facts. I think he even referred, like, essentially cleared up. I think one of the tweets. I don't know if it was Kamala or I think it was Kamala that, or one of the moderators that referred to a tweet he tweeted out, and essentially he answered that directly. Like, here's what I said and what the context of what I said. was, and they did that a couple of times tonight. So as far as answering or just kind of being direct with the question, yes. However, he's the commander in chief at that time. To me, he lacked showing strength, and it was an opportunity tonight. Instead of showing more strength and saying, like, I condemn these folks. This, I like, although he did say I did not incite a riot, but admonishing what happened would have shown more strength, as opposed to saying, well, Nancy Pelosi was responsible for the security. And while that may be true, you're the commander in chief. You were the commander in chief at the time. So Nancy Pelosi was still on your watch. You could have overridden Nancy Pelosi because you're the commander in chief. Frankly, he could have overridden the mayor of DC because he's the commander in chief. It certainly would have been maybe a federal rights versus state rights, although DC doesn't have representation, kind of in the aftermath of things. But in other words, he could have shown that level of strength that would have been a clear delineation between him and the folks at January 6th. And I think he missed an opportunity to show that strength and that clear distinction, so that way it takes all the air out of that critique moving forward from now until November 5th. So yeah, I think he could have been a lot stronger.
Well, a couple of things. The main thing is that he said he had nothing to do with it. There was an illegal act happening. He had nothing to do with it. What's he supposed to say?
Right.
What's he supposed to say? Somebody committed a crime. Well, these people were brought to justice or they weren't. So somebody committed a crime. He's supposed to say you shouldn't commit crimes. I mean, he basically said I had nothing. They're trying to say they're trying to say
basic, yeah.
Well, they're trying to say he started. He said he had nothing to do with it, which is the main point. That he didn't incite a riot. People thought their votes weren't counted and people went off, but he didn't incite a riot. Right. That's the main point.
Right.
Now you're gonna keep going on like, well, I'm sorry that the show condemnation that people attacked the Capitol. Show condemnation that the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. So show people committed a crime and they were brought to justice. That's the point.
But he also does not fully believe that justice was served, because if you go back to his interview with the National Association of Black Journalists, he specifically answered that question, that he would pardon some of the rioters that were found guilty. And his response, when pushed on that point, was that essentially the carceral system is flawed. So to me, he's like, that's what I mean. Like he's leaving that door open for continued association versus essentially dropping the hammer and saying justice worked, that these people did commit crimes, and that they were brought to justice and they are serving their time. Like, I had nothing, I had nothing to do with it. But again, yes, these things can kind of seem very basic and simple, but again, when you're talking to the masses, sometimes simple and basic is what's needed. And to me, that delineation or that distinction could have been made. So I think it was a missed opportunity for him.
I don't think he's talking to the masses. I don't think he's addressing the masses. I think that question is addressed to the Negro whisperers who, you look at it from Trump's perspective, or look at it from someone who doesn't have any skin in the game. He's saying that um, all this, rhetoric about January 6th. What about Minneapolis? What about Seattle?
Right.
Whole
Hmm.
cities were burned down. Kamala Harris and Biden and others never acknowledged anything that crime was committed at all.
Right. Hmm.
So he's saying that I had nothing to do with it, and it's like you want me to show condemnation for January 6th, but nobody's showing condemnation for whole cities being burned down when people were
I,
upset and
I don't
rioting and
disagree.
people
I
and
don't
people.
disagree.
So when white folks think that their vote wasn't counted, white men, and they did do what white men do, is outrage. But when someone, George Floyd dies in plain sight, and black folks get outraged, which they should have. You see what I'm saying? Like it's
No, I
like
understand, but I think he could have done both. I think he's still like I stand by. Like I don't disagree with the fact that essentially he's castigating the double standard.
okay,
Rightfully so. However, I still think he could have shown more strength in that question as opposed to kind of passing the buck. Because to me, it looks soft. Like
okay,
you were the
okay,
commander in chief, and for you to uh, essentially be the leader of the free world, and then be like, oh, well, like Nancy was in charge. It's like, come on, man. Like you were in charge. Like you were.
okay.
This is literally your direct job. You are the commander in chief.
I
So,
think I think I think well, I think
uh,
in my opinion, I think the main thing
yeah,
is that he said he had nothing to do with it. He didn't start a riot.
yeah. Again, I don't
To me, in my
disagree
mind.
that he answered the questions directly. I just think it was a missed opportunity to show more strength
Okay,
and to be make more distinction and to take it off the table. Like that's what I mean.
okay.
Like to
I got you.
completely
I
take it
got you.
off the table.
I got you. You thought it was a missed opportunity for him to pretend he was somebody else.
Sure. Yep. Sure. Just to shut it down. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't think. I don't. Anyway, I think he thought he was. I think he thought he did shut it down. But anyway, so on Ukraine, right? They brought up Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, and they keep asking Trump, what would he do about things that didn't happen when under his watch? Did he make a sort of effort to prevent under his watch? What would you do? He said, this stuff never happened under my watch. He said, I have a relationship with Putin, I have a relationship with leaders around the world, North Korea, China, so on and so forth. People are afraid of me. That I showed strength when I was in office, and these wars never happened. I think he
Right.
nailed that part. And as far as what would he do to clean this up, I think it's all like, it's all hypothetical. But I think I wouldn't say he killed it, but I think he answered the question that needed to be answered. That we were safer when I was in office, and that this war never would have happened. So why do I have to keep addressing immigration? I mean, 10 millions of undocumented immigrants and wars that never would have happened when I was in office. I got to give you a cogent answer about what I'm going to do about a problem someone else created. So I thought he answered the question adequately.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think.
the other thing is that I thought Kamala was weak on this. She just basically gave historical facts. Let me walk you through how this happened. She started giving historical facts about, like,
Right.
the
Right.
history of the Byzantine civilization, and like, she has a command for the facts how it happened, but you know,
I agree. I think that that his well to first address even the question of the moderator as like what would be your plan, how would you handle you know essentially squashing this or quashing this war, conflicts, etc. And of course he didn't go into specifics. I did appreciate him not allowing the moderators to box him in. So they were trying to box him into a binary answer, like a binary response. So specifically, when it came to the questions of Putin and world leaders and quashing the conflicts, essentially kind of attempting to pigeonhole him to say, like, are you in favor of Putin or are you in favor of Zelensky? And man, he doused himself in some extra virgin olive oil and was like, I'm in favor of saving lives. I said, man,
Yeah, but he
I
is
actually
on record.
appreciated the fact that he did, like I appreciated that answer, like truly, because to me it showed that, like to me it showed leadership and the ability to think on your feet, right? That you're not gonna box me into this binary response that because either way it's a gotcha,
I
no
got you.
matter
But
how you
on
respond to
that
that.
point, but on that
Mhm.
point, do you expect the president or someone presidential to answer a question like that? Because I think
Correct, correct. That's
most people who sit in front of those two people in the media, let's be honest, people going there probably need something. They're probably so giddy to be on national TV that they'll, you know what I mean, they'll answer
right.
those questions. But Trump is like, I'm in command here.
Right. So, and that's kind of where I was going with that. That to me, it showed leadership. It showed a presidential presence by him now going to Kamala. How she responded, I agree. Um, the fact that she hasn't met with Putin, I don't like. I don't think that that's a nuanced point that most people, most voters are going to appreciate or maybe even think about. But to me, you should be embarrassed as a VP to even announce that you haven't met with the other side of the conflict. It's like I was like, are you? I was like, wait a minute, are you for real? That you haven't in all this time? You've met with Zelensky 5 times, and you haven't met with Putin not one time. Like how? But yet you were talking about diplomacy. Like diplomacy requires all parties involved. That like what? like,
Right, right,
like
right,
why
right.
would you even
Well,
admit that?
right. Well,
like,
Putin. I mean, Zelensky obviously wore a pink and green sweater to the meeting.
oh
So
God,
he likes
yeah,
pink and green.
yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
she's being political with these on the world
Right,
stage. Like
right, right.
who she
And
likes
I
personally.
don't. But here's the thing too, and again, I think it might be a nuanced point that most voters may not even be considering. Um, you know, Ukraine, although they were not the aggressor, they are not this unreproachable actor in this. And to come out and say, oh, we met with Zelensky, 5 times, you continue to fund their war when, again, if we as the American public have been informed of what's happening to those funds, that they are straight up, that Zelensky is straight up misappropriating funds, that you have Ukrainian oligarchs that are spending U.S. taxpayers' money buying yachts and vacations to Greece and Cyprus instead of being on the front lines. Like, if we as the American public have access to this information, how is it that you, being in intelligence briefings, whether it's once a day, whether it's once a week, you continue to double down on your position that you're going to continue to support Ukraine, but you don't speak to reeling in the spending, which Trump did attack, rightfully
Right,
so. You don't
right,
reel in putting in guidelines of support and why you're continuing to support this clearly proxy war. So how are you any different than the current administration while simultaneously trying to distance yourself in the voters' minds from the current administration?
right.
You know
It
what I
just
mean? But I don't
it
I
speak
don't
yeah.
think that people are thinking about that point
Right,
that deeply per se. And I don't know how much is really going to sway, but to me she's telling you in between the lines who she is. Like, in other words, she's telling you she's going to continue spending our money
right, right, right,
to support
right. Yeah.
Ukraine, irrespective of how they continue to approach this conflict, how whether they're right or wrong, whether they reel in the spending, which Zelensky has not. For what? What's the incentive?
Good. Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
I
So
got you.
yeah. But anyway,
So yeah, I guess back to sort of what Trump the theme from earlier in the debate that why not if you're gonna end the if you're gonna end the war in Ukraine, why not do it tomorrow morning when you go back to work? You know. We're
Right.
gonna do that. Yeah, he did talk about the spending and so on and so forth. Um, so again, I think he won that part, which wasn't hard to do. But he did talk about the spending, which was a rub with the American people early on, how much money was sent to Ukraine. They try to bring up race. Trump just said, I don't care what color she is, whether she's Indian or black, I really don't care. So they try to make that an issue. It's still going back to like what Negro Whispers and what the National Association of Black Journalists think. And I don't think those questions were coming from those two moderators. They're trying to, they're trying to make an issue of something that's a really a non-issue. Trump's like, I really don't care. But
Yeah,
so who do you think?
it threw her off her game. It
Right. So
absolutely, she didn't even know how to respond. I think they were banking on the fact that he's going to blunder. And I think there were a few questions that they were expecting him to whiff on, and he didn't whiff. He didn't
right,
take
right.
the bait.
Well,
And
one thing I thought he would have mentioned was that I had a great relationship with blacks before I was presidential candidate. Al Sharpton, Don King, Jesse Jackson, and so on and so forth. I didn't become racist until I became legitimate presidential candidate.
you know what? I'll say he probably like.
He probably thinks it's silly. It's silly.
Yeah, like I wouldn't even. I'm glad he didn't say that. Let me just say,
Right. I
like
agree.
I'm glad he did because that's the equivalent of, my best friend is black. Like
Right.
so,
Right.
I'm glad he didn't take that
Right.
approach.
Right.
I'm glad he just shut it down. Like,
Right.
listen, I
I
read
thought.
things that she presented herself one way, and now I'm reading things that she's presenting herself another way. I really don't care how she
Right.
presents herself. How she presents herself, it is what it is.
Gotcha. And she
And
also said.
ending it at that,
Right. She also tried to say that he tried to divide the country, but I think fell flat. I think it's
it
something
did
people say.
right.
I think something people said on Twitter, like 4 years ago when he was, when Biden was running against him, that Biden's going to reach across the aisle and bring people together. Trump divides people. He divides black journalists. He divides the media who mad because he's cutting their money off because he's not giving them stories a day in advance to the public. He's going right to Twitter. So the media doesn't like him. That's who he divides.
Yeah, I actually think he missed a great opportunity to hit on her efficacy because as I've said it here many times, you know 118th Congress is looking to be the least effective Congress in history. I didn't think that was possible after 117th Congress was labeled as the least effective Congress in history. So this is the trajectory that we're headed into, and both of those Congresses have been under her administration, under the Biden administration, with I believe it's 37 bills or just under 40 bills on 117th Congress, and then passed, and I think 35 or 36 with 118 so far. So to me, like I would have loved to hear him tie that in terms, like, because I think that would have landed to show what have you been doing. Like, you can continue to harp on my record for 4 years, but what have you been doing in Congress for the last 3.5 years?
Right. Right.
And if he would have hit on Congress's, record and her participation in that, I think that would have landed, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that would have landed beautifully because I think she would have struggled to kind of squirrel her way out of that.
Right. I think he was
yeah.
clear that they destroyed the country over the past 2.5 years. That she's been pretty busy destroying the country, the
Yeah,
economy, safety, immigration. So we're running up on an hour. So who do you think won the debate and why? Who do you think?
Um,
Quickly.
I think so. I think overall, I think Trump edged it out. And really on 2 points that we actually didn't even bring up. He basically told her to shut up twice, and she did it. When she spoke while he was talking, and although he didn't bluntly tell her to shut up, but he did tell her to stop interrupting and to keep quiet. Like, and she did. Like, she did exactly that. It's quite hard to look presidential when somebody telling you to be quiet And that's exactly what you do. She did it with a smirk and a smile and a little, but to me, that's cope. Like you're trying to cope with the fact that you just got, uh, as the quote Mace, in a recent podcast where he said, I'm not we not little bros. I won't use his exact words. We not little bros. Only little bros have big homies. So I don't respect big homies. And she just got treated like a little bro. And it's quite hard to view someone as a president who is strong, who's going to be strong in that position, who's going to stand firm in that position when you just got sunned on live TV twice. So I think that, at least for me, those two incidences edged him out, and even the moderators actually shut her down.
Okay,
They,
yeah.
they
So I
shut
think
her down once closer to the end. She kept like the only point she tried to push back on, the only point, and she was like, "No, I just want to respond," and they literally talked over her and shut her down.
right.
So she
I
just
think
got ping ponged,
right. I think it's a
doing
game.
the,
I think it's a game that she and the Democrats play, where they try to play the victim and try to play the innocent. Where
yeah,
you can give the facade of being non-threatening and so on and so forth, but you're the one you're the aggressor.
right,
She's afraid that he may attack her personally, but she's the one attacking him personally.
right,
She's afraid that he may talk over top of her,
right,
but she's talking over top of him,
mhm, yep,
and so he did the exact opposite of what they thought he would do,
hmm,
or what they said he would do. So she's
yeah,
planning to. She's the one being the aggressor, attacking him, talking over top of him, but trying to make it seem like he's the bully. So
right.
it's like a sleight of hand. And anyway, but I think Trump won. I think he won. But I don't think Kamala embarrassed herself. So
No, I think
I
she
think
did
she
much better.
I don't think she embarrassed herself. I think Trump won. I think he just had to stay in the pocket. He didn't have to do anything phenomenal. Stay in the pocket, and hit singles and doubles, and you don't hit a home run. Just do your job. And so, um, um, people who are going to vote for Kamala probably still going to vote for her. People who are going to vote for Trump probably still going to vote for him. And the undecided is probably, my guess is that they probably uncertain about Kamala and her policies, or uncertain about what she's going to do and her capabilities. I don't think she won over any undecided voters. So that's my take. So that's Trump and the GE Parses, Harris versus Trump debate. Thank you for listening. Thank you.